I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Welcome back to Millennial Classics, and on this show we talk about the best and most memorable movies, books, and culture-changing events from our generation. I think today's all three. I mean, the culture-changing event is the goddamn election that's happening here, but also I'm talking about both a book and a movie today. Is it a Millennial Classic? I don't know. I think it won a few awards, but I do know that the book Hillbilly Elegy by JD Vance was a New York Times bestseller. I did just finish the book and I did want to react to the movie because this book it's very confusing to me. Reasons that are truly unclear. But anyways, Hillbilly Elegy, it's the memoir of JD Vance's life. It came out a while ago before he was into politics and all of that stuff. So I feel like that's the main reason this book is so truthful about where he came from and who the people he grew up around were like. It is a side of America that I rarely hear about. I felt so much sympathy and empathy. I felt for this kid in this book, for little JD. His life seems so fucking hectic. The relationship that JD has with his grandma and his grandfather in this book is truly amazing because of the rest of the relationships in his life, mainly his mother and all of the men that his mother brought around him constantly. This is one of those memoirs that are truly gut wrenching. It's raw. It's to the core of the experience that he had as a child growing up in Middletown, Ohio. Just because he's a politician, it's so hard not to look at the book from that perspective of like, this is a politician that is making decisions with other people's lives. So it really does confuse me based on the life story of this man, how he can be the politician he is today, the struggles that he's gone through, the people that had allowed him to get to where he is today. I don't want to say he doesn't care about them, but I am going to say it's confusing to me how the policies he's pushing for would help him or the people around him if he were born and raised in a world that his laws and legislation were the law of the land, if that makes any sense. But talking about the book specifically, the rags to riches story of this book is so convoluted because his greatness happens in like the last, I'd say, 2.5 years of his high school, and then it like skyrockets after that. But from birth till sophomore year of high school, his life is a fucking roller coaster of hell. It's just constant, ripped apart from family member to family member, moving around to different places, drug abuse, domestic violence, alcoholism. I mean, his life is just insane, just insane. And you just feel for this kid so much. And when he's telling the story in the book, he tells it from the perspective of himself at the time, not from the perspective of him as a grown man knowing how crazy his life was. He tells you throughout the book, this was just another day. I wake up in the middle of the night and there's fucking grandma's throwing lamps, lighting my grandfather on fire. It's just another day. There's events in this book that happen that you would gasp to that he thinks is just normal, and like he only comes to the realization that it's obviously not when he leaves, when he joins the Marines. That's when he starts to understand, holy shit, my life is insane. I mean, it doesn't take that long because he does take trips to California. He lives with his dad for a little bit. But to see the transition to him as a politician does really shock me. And like, there are bits of that, of his perspective as a conservative politician, where he thinks that the welfare state is giving or doing too much for the people at the bottom. And he does mention how he does feel as though that they are taking advantage of the system. The core theme of this book is, I believe, that he is truly a lucky human being because he had his grandma at his side. He's truly, truly lucky because of his grandmother and his sister Lindsay. He calls his grandmother Mima, which I think is kind of adorable. Those two people are the key reason he was able to escape this crazy life of the hillbilly spiral of disaster that his entire family and community kind of fall into constantly. His family's originally from Kentucky. They move up to Middletown, Ohio because of this manufacturing plant. I think it's the car manufacturing company his grandfather works for. And that's where he spends most of his life, in Middletown, Ohio. And he truly loves it there. And compared to Kentucky, Middletown, Ohio is the suburbs. It's like the great American experience. But throughout the years, that place, after the car company leaves for China or whatever the hell happens, Middletown, Ohio drops drops down to the lowest denominator, which is the folks that were transplants to Ohio that moved there for that job, but without that job, they just get back to living. I don't know how else to say it except for they get back to living hillbilly life. And it is disastrous. His mom obviously had a whole lot of mental issues that she was dealing with. He doesn't outright in the book specifically say that she was dealing with anything like OCD or schizophrenia or any like mental diagnosis, but he does mention of the drug abuse. He does mention of the alcoholism. He does mention of the constant marriages or relationships she has with men that last months, years at the very most. And I don't even know how many marriages his mom went through, but the torture of bringing JD and Lindsay, her two kids, to all of these different men's houses every single year, every single few months, is just mind-numbingly insane to me. There is no consistency in this kid's life, and his mother puts him through the fucking ringer. There's a few scenes with his mother in the book that I'm expecting to see in the movie, but in the book there was a scene where his mom goes crazy on the highway, pulls over, and is like screaming, threatening that she's gonna kill both of them because for some goddamn reason, and it goes crazy, and it's at the first event where child services is brought into the family. And then his mom becomes a nurse. Woo-hoo! I'm a nurse too, so that makes me excited. I'm like, she's getting her life back on track. And then she gets back into that cycle. And then there's another scene that just sticks with me from the book where his mother is begging him for his pee because she needs to get a clean drug test to be cleared by the nursing board. And it just hurts so bad to know. And I think at this time in JD's life, he's around like high school, maybe freshman or sophomore year. And there's two things going on. There's one part of it where he's like, absolutely not. I've been through this a million times. You promised you wouldn't do drugs again. I'm not going to give you my pee, because he believes that and he's standing by that. But on the other hand, he's also been smoking weed with his friends and he's afraid that he'll give her the pee. It's just such a vivid story of this kid's life that you can feel it and how intense just all of it is. His mom needs pee from him so she can get back to work being a drug addict, working as a nurse. But at the same time, he's over here fucking around, not going to school half the time, smoking weed with his buddies. The fact that he made it out, the fact that he's living the American dream today, it's truly, truly, truly amazing. But I just don't like what he wants now for the folks that are currently living the life he was lucky to get out of. And then last but not least, I have to mention this because I don't follow politics as deeply as I think I probably should, but I follow it enough to see like not the highlights or the lowlights, but like just the biggest spectacle viral moments of all of these candidates that are running. The most often viral moments I see of JD, and obviously that doesn't mean that that's all he's about, but what I see most about him is talking about abortion is horrible, is talking about how folks who have kids should have more votes than folks who don't have kids. How what did he say about women who don't have kids? Cat ladies, crazy cat ladies, like how he's demeaning them. And it just blows my mind that that's the thing that I hear him talk about the most, when the only human beings in his life that allowed him to get out of this horrible situation that he was born and raised in were the women in his life. But he wants to give them less rights. He wants to take away from them the freedoms that allow them to help people like him. His mom, his grandmother, and his sister are his number 1 and 2, bar none, not even close. But it seems to me that he is in a situation now that he can help those two kinds of people, his sister and his grandmother, and he's choosing to make life harder for them. It just blows my mind. It really does blow my mind. But listen, that's me as just a spectator. I don't know the details of the policies that this man believes in. Like I just said, all I know is the highlights and the lowlights of what I see that are viral moments of JD Vance. And it does shock me that everything I see about him, he's trying to change the lives of women in a way that would make it so much harder for them to do the things that helped him when he was a kid. It shocks me. It bothers me. But let's see how the movie comes along. I am excited to see the depiction of Memoir. I just explained to you how she is his number 1, but at the same time, she's a fucking tough hillbilly. And that's what he calls her. Like, she cusses. She's got the sailor's mouth. She's hardcore to like the bone. There's a description of her childhood where she comes out and almost kills a man. Almost killed him. I told you how she lit her husband, his grandfather, on fire, but she almost kills a man when she's like 10 or 13 years old because this man is breaking into her farm or some shit. She's the hardest core hillbilly grandmother, like the way he describes her, ever. But at the same time, she has this huge heart for children as a whole, but specifically JD. So that's my book review of Hillbilly Elegy. Let's see how much of this book is in the movie. I am a hardcore believer that the books are usually always better, but for memoirs and for autobiographies, I don't know. I really don't know.